So we can start, sir, admit everyone. So rest of
Start, huh?
yes, sir. Sundaran, sir, you can start.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Respected Chairman, SARC, Sri Jalapati sir, in absentia, and respected Secretary, Panaraj sir, of SARC of IGI, in absentia. I welcome the today's participants who have been giving us a great support in organizing a program of this type, and which is a needy one for the people who are, it is going to be a future rather. I welcome you all, including the speaker of the day and the participants. Namaskaram to all. I welcome you all to this program. And this has been a great support. We have been getting great support from the participants as they are increasing in numbers as the day progresses. We are happy about having conducted this program. And this is one of the subject which needs to be in future, rather the governments may also take it up. We hope so. And today's subject being, this is on Ind AS 20, accounting for government grants and disclosure of government assistance, and Ind AS 21, the effect of changes in foreign exchange rates. I just want to go to you one small example which I experienced when I was a student. Like this foreign exchange difference. I was doing one bank or branch audit. I when the manager was discussing with me, he said, "You cannot question me like this, sir. You wherever you go, you be asking for the latest valuation of the foreign currency which needs to be implemented in the accounts and the balance sheet." I said, "Yes." Now, if that being the case, we have not done for this year, he said. I said, that will be my audit point. So he came voluntarily and offered without knowing that it will have any significant impact on the balance sheet, because the latest dollar value had changed to the great extent, and we are accounting for the current commitment to the government, and therefore it has to be valued on the current rates. I feel that this all have been said in this Ind AS, and I welcome today's speaker, Sri Mohan Lavi sir. Namaskaram, sir.
Namaskaram, namaskaram.
Let me just introduce Mr. Mohan sir. Sri Mohan R. Lavi qualified as a chartered accountant in 1989. He has over 25 years of experience in the industry across a variety of industries. He had worked in senior positions in finance and manufacturing and software companies. He has got over 6 years of experience in practicing in the practice as a COP holder from Bangalore, and he heads the Ind AS and GST practice of the firm. Mohan is the author of books on IFRS, Ind AS, key audit matters, and the related topics. Sri Mohan sir has spoken at various conferences in India and abroad on accounting standards, IFRS, Servants, Oxalis, and GST. He is a faculty member with the Institute for their IFRS certificate course and registered valuers programs. With this, I introduce our today's speaker. Sir, the forum is yours, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks for giving us. Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And so good morning to all the participants, and also very importantly, happy Independence Day. I was telling when the SARC asked me to speak on this topic on 15th of August, the first question I asked her was, August Independence participants, I asked her. But there is apparently no independence from learning, which is why this program has been continued. But really, as Sundarajan sir was saying, really happy to see such a lot of participation in this program. Early morning program on a holiday on a Sunday. It's really nice that all of you have really joined in and are keen to learn about this topic, which, as Sundarajan sir correctly said, this is going to be the future of accounting. This is going to be the future of accounting. I think now we are moving towards a stage wherein very clearly there are going to be accounting standards in different forms and income tax in different in different situations. Both are not going to probably sort of talk to each other or be one, because that's why ICTS you can see is a lot of difference. So when you look at India's standards, you will find that from the income tax perspective, there is a lot of difference. I don't think we should even compare those two, because there is a lot of difference between ICTS and Ind AS, and also as per the AS and also, right? So I think the first thing I want to send across as a message is that please don't worry about the income tax aspect of Ind AS, because that's a separate battle. We anyhow have to fight that battle now. That's a battle we anyhow have to fight. Now it's going to become a little bit more intense with all this faceless, nameless, whatever assessments coming in. So if you're looking at it from because the concepts in Ind AS, which are slightly different from what we know in the AS world, the concepts in Ind AS, which are, they use this word called a substance over form very, very frequently, wherein a lot of notional entries are made in Ind AS. A lot of notional entries are made in Ind AS. So the tax impact of those things and all that will probably remain a little bit of a situation. So I would send across that message that please don't worry about the income tax thing, because if we try to look at it from the point of view of income tax, we are going to have a lot of issues in understanding what this Ind AS is all about and looking at why these standards have come into the place in the first place, right? Okay, so today I've been given two standards for 2 hours. Ind AS 20 on government grants and 21 on the changes of effects in foreign exchange rates. Government grants is a pretty small standard. It's a pretty simple standard. Even Forex also 21 also is not a very lengthy standard, but these two standards are obviously in sequence, and we will first look at government grants and then we will go into the effects of foreign exchange rates. So yeah, that is done. So the definition which has been given in the standard for government grants is that assistance by the government in the form of transfers in return for past or future compliance with certain conditions. They exclude those forms which can reasonably have placed upon them, which means that basically government assistance for certain industries. So basically the standard divides the assistance provided by the government in 2 areas, which is government grants, in which actual money is actually flowing in the form of assets or in the form of cash or other monetary considerations. It could also be intangible in the form of intangible assets like landing rights and all those things. The other is just assistance in the form of, let us say, encouraging a particular industry to, in a particular area. So it sort of divides these 2 things and tries to give us accounting guidance for, what is the government grants. Now here, a very interesting discussion comes up, because they say government grant refers to government agencies and similar bodies, local, national or international. Now, one of the questions we always keep getting is that, why is it called accounting for government grants? Why should it not be accounting for grants? Because you need not necessarily get grants only from the government. You can always get it from other agencies. But I think if you look at the word called the similar bodies, if you look at the word called similar bodies, it sort of expands the scope of this agencies to whom who can possibly give grants, to include not necessarily only government grants, but also, grants given by the government. As we know, government means central government, state government, and all those things, but also similar agencies. I can give you an example for this. There is for the biotech industry, there is a body called as BIRAC, which is basically Biotech Research Association. Now, BIRAC, for all practical purposes, is a separate body. It is not like, owned by the government, or it is not a government body. It's not a, not that sort of a association. But yeah, the government has sort of promoted it, let me say, to include biotech research and biotechnology in the country. Now, BIRAC has got a lot of, gives a lot of grants to various biotech companies. We would have to use that we would have to use Ind AS 20 for that also, because it's basically a grant given by a similar body to the government, I can say. So I'm quite sure the participants are going to ask me a question. Will this also apply to private grants? like grants given by one company to another. And for all practical purposes, if you had looked at Ind AS 109 on financial instruments, interest-free loan cannot be given under Ind AS. We cannot give an interest-free loan in Ind AS. It will have to be converted to equity. It will be shown as equity as a financial instrument. So the financial instrument standard will take over there and not necessarily the Ind AS 20 standard. But I would probably try to say that the grant will generally have some sort of terms and conditions which are attached to it. We'll come to those issues in a little bit of time, but normally you can make out it will be government or government agencies. I use the word called government agencies and similar bodies which are promoted by the government. I'll later on give you all a very good example of a German institution which gave aid to this airline called as Lufthansa. And it was actually a loan. It was actually a loan which Lufthansa has accounted for as a grant, as income, because they felt that we are not going to repay the loan. So very interesting, change happened there because they have very clearly given the reason why they have, shown that as a grant, because it's basically not. So the loan was not given from the government. The loan was given by a body. It was similar to the government. So therefore, we would have to apply this. So I would probably say that definition does not includes government agencies and similar institutions or agencies promoted by the government. So in case you all want to distinguish between the private grants versus the government grants, I think you all would have to look at whether it applies under Ind AS 109 under a financial instrument. If it meets the definition of a financial instrument, then I think we'll show it under 109. Otherwise, it possibly can come into the Ind AS 20 standard. Right. So reasonable compliance, assurance of compliance with conditions. Grants will obviously, there's an expectation that they'll be received. Generally, income is deferred to matching with costs. So we all know this from the AS itself. We know that there are two types of accounting for grants. One is the income approach and second is the what we call as the capital approach. Income approach means we'll show it in the P&L account. Capital approach means invariably for grant of fixed assets, or Ipala in India as Malapuri, you should not say fixed assets at all. PPE, we will have to use the new word called PPE. For grant of PPE, we can reduce the value of the grant from the value of the total amount of the PPE and show the net difference for the purpose of depreciation. So normally, as I mentioned, the grant will come with conditions, and these conditions are normally called as utilization conditions. What are the purposes for which this grant has to be utilized? Now, we know for a fact that if an entity, if an entity is, let us say, for example, reasonably expecting to comply, they will obviously account it for the government grant. But I think the more important question we have to answer is whether the time frame over which this is recognized is important, because if there is no time frame fixed for that meeting those conditions, the grant may have to be recognized as income immediately. I will give you a small example which happened about 4 or 5 years back. This was a company in Bangalore. It was a Sikh company called as Indian Telephone Industries, ITA Limited, about 5 or 6 years back. This company was not doing too well. It is still not doing too well because, as all of you are aware, mobile phone is, ITA was basically in the business of manufacturing telephones. Those black colored landline telephone with, dialing numbers and all. Nowadays, of course, nobody was using it. So this company was under a little bit of quite a little bit of a problem. And they had a huge debt. Sales were obviously not happening. So there was some sort of a plan which was put up for restructuring the company. And they went and approached the government, and they got a government grant also for that. Now, very interestingly, the grant letter said that there was no time frame mentioned in this letter. The grant letter said that I'm giving you a grant of 1,000 crores for improvement of balance sheet. This was the reason why the grant was given. Single line letter, 1,000 crores given for improvement of balance sheet. Now, the C&AG auditors, the ITI obviously wanted to show this as income over a period of time because they could not, if they had paid 1,000, they had showed 1,000 crores as income, 30% tax on that. The net grant would have only been about 700 crores. The C&AG said it is income immediately because no time frame has been fixed on this thing. There's no time frame for this grant, therefore it is income. How long will it take to improve the balance sheet? If you looked at the balance sheet of ITI, they had loans of about 990 crores. So we knew what the intention of the government was. The intention of the government is very clear. You take this 1,000 crores, pay off your loans, your balance sheet improves. So how long will it take to improve the balance sheet? Effectively about half an hour, that's all. But then if we had looked at the other aspects, we wanted to run for a few years. So we went and told the C&AG that, look, this is going to take a little bit of time. It's not just repayment of loan. We will repay the loan definitely, but we have a plan. We want to repay 30% of the loan. We want to ask some waiver. So this is a 3-year plan. So kindly give us, permit us to defer this over 3 years. But C&AG, all of you know how C&AG is. They said, we will not agree for this unless you get specific grant letter saying 3 years you can defer. So ITI sent somebody to Delhi and told them that, please, can you give a revised letter saying that this is for 3 years? Other than that, there was one more problem there. That person got back the letter, said that grant is deferred for 30 years. Typing mistake. Now C&AG were wondering, how can this become 30 years when we asked only for 3 years? So we told him, sir, this is typo. 30 years, I don't think even ITI will exist as a company. So we will just put one white marker on that and make it 3 years and please accept for it. They agreed for it, unfortunately. Fortunately, they agreed for it. Invariably, you will find that the grant letter should mention those conditions. If it is not there, we are in a situation wherein, if the time frame is not mentioned, we are in a situation wherein we may have to show it as income immediately. Okay. Quick question has come up from Sony, sir. Sir, good morning. First of all, investment subsidies from industrial department will fall under the standard. Please elaborate. Definitely, yes, it will fall under the standard because it does not meet the definition of a, as I told you, I'll go by elimination principle, sir. Not a financial instrument, money received, similar body to government. And it is, as I said, promoted by the government. So you will have to apply Ind AS 20. In fact, even deferral of sales tax loans, all those things also would come under the standard, not under financial instrument standard. Okay, so this is as far as the recognition is concerned. We know about these two things. There could be non-monetary grants and there can be grants which are, for income purposes. Invariably, the matching concept, which is never a part of Ind AS, as you look at other Ind AS standards, you will find that matching concept, there's no matching concept at all. In fact, Ind AS believes in this 1 year concept. Whatever happens in that year should be accounted for in that year. No preponement, no postponement. That's why we are having discounting. That's why we don't have a line item called as prior period. That's why we are restating it, right? So Ind AS believes in all this situations. So this 1 year concept is very, very important. Amit said, why the grant received by ITI will not be considered as capital one and credit to the reserves as it was used for improvement of balance sheet. But yeah, the problem, Amit, was balance sheet was being improved because of revenue matters, not because of capital matters. They did not have any assets to purchase in the grant. So therefore, it was shown as revenue only. And it was basically they wanted it for payment of salaries and all those things. So it was more revenue in nature. So when this matching concept is not there, so invariably what will happen if it is for expenses, or I will put the word called as reimbursement of expenses. Normally, you will have a situation wherein grants are given for reimbursement of expenses. What, in case any of you are having a situation wherein you have got a grant letter and the grant letter does not talk about the time frame which is mentioned, I would suggest you please get it revised and put a time frame, because it is not only for the purpose of documentation, but accounting also depends upon the fact that what time frame are we going to amortize this, or what time are going to, or what time frame are we going to recognize this as income. Very important to put it as a what you can call as terms and conditions of the grant, and time frame also is very, very important. A very small point which has to be mentioned here is that, as we have also seen in examples like ITR, probably I'll call them as outlier examples. They don't happen every single day. Normally, the grants are given on on the basis of some what we can call as pre-agreed terms. We can say that this is what has been agreed for, and this is what we are going to do, and this is what we will do with this particular period. So The two methods still continue in Ind AS also. There's no change in Ind AS also. The two methods continue. Actually, there was when Ind AS first came, it was not there. But, there was a situation when first Ind AS 20 came in. See, when Ind AS 20 came first, we had a lot of discussion particularly in MCA about why we should introduce, as all of you know, 2004, 2005, Ind AS was implemented, IFRS was implemented abroad. Our AS, the existing AS, was based largely on IAS only, International Accounting Standards. So strictly speaking, we should not have had any problem in converting to Ind AS. But MCA being MCA, they said, no, there's a problem, we will have to look at it and all those things. They had one problem in one standard. They said that we will apply all your Ind AS standards, no problem. And only one standard is a problem. It is called as IAS 41, Agriculture Accounting Standard in India. How is it possible? How is it even possible to have an accounting standard for agriculture in India? So the IASB was trying to tell them that it is in the nature of not only for rice and crops and all, but also for things like biological assets and all those. So that is why it sort of got delayed. So when Ind AS 20 came into the country, they did not have this capital requirement. It was only shown as income. I told you, see, IFRS believed in this concept of 1 year. Whatever happens in that year, accounted for in that year. Whatever is in the future is discounted to present value. Whatever in the past is restated. In 3 sentences, if you want me to explain IFRS, that's how it is for you. So when this came, they said, no, it has to be income only or the grant period. If the grant period is not mentioned, it will be shown as income immediately. But subsequently, 2017-18, there was an amendment in the Companies Act. We thought that, many of these intangible assets are being provided. In fact, if you look at the Air India's balance sheet, you will find that landing rights, they've got so much of landing rights in so many airports in the government. Landing rights has been given in so many, that's nothing but an intangible asset. But again, in some cases, it has been a grant also. In some places, they've given it as a grant also. So they've given it as a grant saying that you do not pay for it, but Air India is going to take it from the government. So now both these methods are still very much accepted. And obviously the grant letter will tell you what it is. I don't think there should be a problem in terms of capital versus revenue. The only problem should be in terms of grant period. That's why I said, if you specifically mention this in your grant letter, I think many of the problems will be called. Okay. A quick question from Arun Kumar has come. There's instance of parent providing fund to 6 subsidiary company for paying salaries, but these are treated as a loan only. Will grant appear here? Please clarify. Again, I think Nataraj has already replied that, saying that Ind AS 109 will have to apply here. You're right. So see, invariably, Arun, what happens is that, as I said, I'll go by elimination principle. The elimination principle here is that Ind AS 20 applies for government agencies and similar bodies. Similar bodies means institutions which have been promoted by the government. Strictly speaking, I will not apply it to a private limited company or to listed companies who are giving intercorporate deposits, loans to each other, because that disclosure will probably come in here. So here, you're talking about a fact that it is a 6 separate company for paying salaries but treated as loan only. So initially what will happen, if you look at Ind AS 109, financial asset of one person is the financial liability of another entity. Right? That's a very basic fundamental concept. It's either financial liability or equity, they say, as per Ind AS 109. In this particular case, initially you may treat it as loan. You may do a fair valuation as per Ind AS 109. But if it is not repayable, it will not come as a grant, it will go as equity. It will go into your equity. It will not come as a grant here. So I think that is what will be done here in this particular case. Okay. Now, the next part of the standard, of course, is that monetary grants disclose as, this we all know very well. One of the things in Ind AS is about this presentation also. We'll have to worry a lot about presentation because, of course, we do have a Schedule 3 for Ind AS. Part 2 is there for Ind AS, but Schedule 3 does not give too much of details about presentation. I'm just going to give you all, because we've spoken about something called as netting off with related expense here. I'm going to give you all a situation wherein like the case which Arun Kumar only said right now. So I have two situations here. Salaries are being reimbursed. Let us say that 50% of the salaries are being reimbursed. And the salary cost to an entity is, let us say, 25 lakhs per annum. The question is whether we should show 25 lakhs of rupees as salary debit to the P&L account and show grants received as, the amounts received from the reimbursements as, income, or I will have to, or we can show it as net because it's related to the salaries. I can show 12.5 lakhs net, saying 50% has been received from the, holding company or whoever it is. The response to this would be very simple. The response to this would depend upon, see, that's the best part of Ind AS. You will always have one standard somewhere, which will give you some clarification. If I want to show it as income, I will go back to Ind AS 115, revenue recognition. And there they say that revenue is what is recognized or received in the ordinary course of activities of the enterprise. If getting your grant every year is ordinary course, please show it as revenue. If it is not, please show it as netting off that. So that's why, this linkage between these various Ind AS standards, I would feel that it's a one-time expenditure, this grant. So we will show it as, as a netting off of this thing and show it net in the P&L account. One of the things which Ind AS does, I'm quite sure that all of you are aware of this now, but I will repeat it for the purpose of, giving you all additional comfort in the fact that I'm not saying this as an error. Okay, I'm not saying this that people make an error, but there'll be judgments you'll make in Ind AS which could prove to be, I won't say wrong, but different later on. I'll put it that way. I'm being very careful in my words here, right? I'm not saying purposely error and all, because if you say purposely, willful or not, it will go to Ind AS 8 prior period restatement. There'll be a problem there, right? Let us say you make an estimate of this grant period. Grant period has not been mentioned. Let us say grant period has not been mentioned, and you have said 2 years. So you're amortizing this income over 2 years. Later on, you got a grant. You got a what you can say, letter from this particular grant saying that no, it's not 2 years, it's 1 year only, or it's 3 years. Whatever the facts have changed. Obviously, it's not 2 years, it's 3 years. Very clearly, there's a small problem in presentation the last year because they're showing it as 2 years, but actually it is 3 years. Is it a mistake falling under Ind AS 8? No, it is not, because willful failure to use or misuse of information which you had is what Ind AS 8 defines it. That is why Ind AS disclosures will save you a lot. Ind AS disclosures will save you a lot. In your disclosure for government grants, you can very easily say that we got this subsequently. Therefore, it is being amortized now over 3 years, the balance amount, and not over only 2 years. So disclosures, you can use disclosures as a very, very important, what I won't say saving grace, but it can be shown as it can be used as a device to, make whatever changes in net this thing here. So Badrinaran sir, okay, good morning to you also, sir. Can we not show it under other income as it is not revenue instead of netting off? I would still, I would go by netting it off, but because it's related to that salaries only. But yeah, if you want to show it as other income, nothing prevents you. But revenue from operations, but any other income is okay, no problem at all. So when we look at this aspect of Ind AS, when you look at this aspect of Ind AS, when we told about presentation and all the classification is very, very important. Government. Okay, Akshay has got a question. Why government grant is not recognized under 115 when we presume that when the business tends to go bad, government will intervene to make it good? Government has rules to help the industries that are not performing well in that particular country. Is it because we have a specifically listed out in Ind AS 20? Yeah, I think you asked a question and you answered it also, Akshay. Correct. It is because we have a specific, Ind AS 20 which talks about government grants here, but also, I think we will have to be clear that I would not even go near 115. I will think this is more near a financial instrument standard than revenue standard. Government grant should be more from the financial instrument side than because there are various types of financial instruments which can turn into grants. So I will go by that particular standard and not necessarily, because revenue is very specific. We have 2 types of revenue. Performance obligation should be there. All those requirements in Ind AS 115 are there. So may not be applicable in the case of a government grant. That is why we'll have to use this here. I told you, government grant, sales tax deferral loans would also come into as a government grant here. Okay, Arun is saying grant letter mentioned for 2 years and this is provided for as an asset, which took 5 years to deduct in this. You will grant letter guide us on the number of years or the, I don't think the grant letter will tell you this, but the useful life is ultimately, I mean, that will depend upon your use of the asset. So that will decide your useful life. But grant is only for the purpose of reducing the, the value of the asset for the purpose of depreciation. That's all it will have to be. Forgiveness of loan is also called as a government grant. I think this is what was mentioned earlier, also saying that the loan has been forgiven. But again, I'm still saying that please look at it from 2 aspects, not only from the point of view of private limited companies. This is the underlying theme of the standard is very clear. Government agencies, similar bodies. So though there's no specific scope of exemption for a, let us say, a private limited company or companies which are in this thing. So we will use that method still. We will go by the financial instrument standard. Only then we will come to this particular standard here. So we will have to look at that also. In fact, if you look at Andhra Sugars, very interesting conversion to Ind AS happened, Andhra Sugars. In fact, I told you, I was telling you all about disclosures and why disclosure becomes very important in Ind AS. I will give you all a very interesting thing which happened. NASSCOM, yes, Raman sir, yes, NASSCOM will be a similar body. Grants given by, I told you, BIRAC, NASSCOM, any of these association type of people. But strictly speaking, private limited company may not meet that. I will tell you why these disclosures help, though it's not related to grants specifically, but I'll tell you how disclosures help a lot in Ind AS. This is 2017. First set of companies were going to Ind AS. 2015, they had to do it, but the first publications came in. I mean, the first conversions happened in 31st March 2017 financial statements, because Ind AS opening balance sheet was 1/4/2015 and all. As a company, Great Eastern Shipping, they first 30th June 2016 quarter, they presented their Ind AS financials on SEBI listed companies, so they presented it. Second quarter also they kept, I mean, obviously it was mandatory. Ind AS 34 is mandatory for interim reporting, so they had to publish every quarter. In the month of December quarter, they gave a very long note on some consolidation. They gave a very long disclosure. It was a very lengthy disclosure. I read the disclosure, and what I could make out was that they had forgotten to consolidate subsidiary in the previous 2 quarters. It was an omission. I will just put it in straight language, because they had actually forgotten to consolidate one particular subsidiary for whatever purposes. But the note was given in such a nice manner that it did not look like a mistake. They had written the note in such a manner that they felt that this was, control was there, because again, control definition is very loose in Ind AS. So they felt that it was control was there, control was not there. Now control is there, therefore we are consolidating. I was very, quite, I mean, not worried, but I thought I knew the auditor very well. So I called him up and asked him. I told him I saw that note, only for academic purpose I'm asking you this question. Did you forget to consolidate and now disclosing it? He said, correctly, don't tell anybody, he said. That is exactly what has happened, but we have disclosed it because don't tell him. So I'm not saying we should use it for that particular purpose, but a lot of judgments and estimates made can change subsequently. What is going to protect you all in Ind AS is only going to be your disclosures. That is very, very clear. So similarly, that is why it is called as financial reporting standards globally. You report. Reporting is not only accounting, it's also disclosure. So that is how we will have to worry about accounting for this particular government grant. Can foreign grants also be treated as government grants? Foreign, domestic, no problem. It will still be treated as government grants. Again, government and government agencies. Sales tax deferment as per the standard. How to account for sales tax deferment as per the standard. So you have got, for all practical purposes, you've got a loan, let us say, from the point of view of sales tax. And that amount is obviously going to be on some basis of some estimate, say a total revenue, and of course, now this question of sales tax will not come because GST, nothing is going to happen in GST. But anyway, assuming you get a GST loan. So loan is based on certain criteria, right? It's total estimate revenue, actual GST rate, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is, right? That amount is obviously going to be set off against your future payments or earnings after, let us say, 5 or 6 years. You'll show it over 5 or 6 years later on. When that so basically it's given to you in the form of a liability deferral, so to say. Liability is crystallized and later it is deferred. So whatever your earning or whatever dues you have for the next 5 years are going to be deferred subsequently. So you'll have to pay it only after year 5. That amount which is captured for the first 5 years will be shown as a government grant. It will be shown as a government grant. In fact, for all practical purposes, you can also show it as a liability. Why this is important is because when will the amortization happen? After year number 5 only. After year number 5, when that particular payment is made or when that particular, say a GST payment is made, at that point in time, it will be shown as a grant. It is very important that the sales tax loan should say that a sales tax loan has to be repaid. It's very, very important. Please understand that. There are 2 types of sales tax grants given, were given at least, not now, they don't give it any longer. One was for the first 5 years, nothing, tax-free, no problem at all. Subsequent 5 years, you will have to calculate liability, pay after the 10th year. The second type is what I'm saying, not the first type. The first type will, because there's no involvement of any liability or there's no calculation also involved, even if you show it as income, it will go as, even if you show it as a grant, it will go as income in one particular year, right? Yeah, UNICEF, NGO is a little bit of a dangerous stuff. Srinivas Rao Garu has asked this question. NGO, again, I'm going to be a little bit careful here because I understand that many of the NGOs, especially the small NGOs we're talking about here, may not come under the Ind AS roadmap, so that's fine. But a very large NGO, say for example, the Bill Gates Foundation, again, I do not know whether they're following. We should remember that IFRS and any of these large European bodies also, they say that it also applies to non-government organizations abroad, not in India. They say you can use different terms. You do not call it as equity share capital. You can call it as capital, or you can call it as fund. So IFRS applies to all these institutions. It may not be in the Indian context. So an NGO giving a loan in India may not come under Ind AS, I would feel, because unless they are mandated to go for Ind AS or they voluntarily adopt Ind AS. For example, this I remember this foundation of ISKCON, which gives this midday meal scheme. They have been following IFRS right from 2015 onwards. I forget the name immediately, but they've got this ISKCON body which gives this midday meal scheme. They have been following, not even Ind AS, they've been following IFRS from 2014-15 itself. So you can apply it, if you can apply it, but I'm specific context of this UNICEF and NGOs, correct, Akshay Patra, thank you Satish. Akshay Patra, specific concept of this, the Akshay Patra has been doing IFRS from 2014 itself. Bill Gates Foundation, for example, Srinivas Rao Garu said, Bill Gates Foundation. Yeah, if it is given from the Bill Gates Foundation, of course, Bill Gates Foundation is invariably US GAAP. We'll have to look at that particular situation there, whether the US GAAP is required or not. But I would just put it like this. Suppose Bill Gates Foundation in Europe gives somebody else in Europe money, right? They will have to follow IFRS. Indian context, look at applicability, whether Ind AS 20 is applicable to you in the first case or not. If it is not applicable, obviously you do not have to follow Ind AS 20 in roadmap and all those things. See, we'll have to be very clear. As per SEBI from 2006 itself, SEBI has given a guidance note in 2006 saying that listed companies can present in IFRS, not Ind AS. I'm talking about 2006. Because 2004, when Europe went to IFRS, they told India also, you also go to IFRS. SEBI said, no problem, I will issue a circular. Listed companies can present their financial statements in IFRS. There are about 4,500 listed companies in India, active listed companies. How many presented in IFRS? About 10 or 11. You can count them by the fingers of your hand. You can name them also. It's all the usual culprits. Infosys, Wipro, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, Airtel, Rediff. Remaining companies did not present out, even though they could present in IFRS. What was the reason for this? The reason for this is, in India, unless you mandate, nobody will adopt. voluntary adoption is not going to take place. You should tell it is a rule, you have to follow it, then only they'll adopt it. That's what I'm saying, sir. Grants from Bill Gates Foundation to Indian company. You look at the Indian company, whether they have to follow Ind AS 20 or not. Even AS, it will not change too much. I would still feel that from the point of view of this particular grant he is talking about, Bill Gates Foundation, it would still meet the definition of a grant. Again, I am assuming that it is given for the purposes of any specific purposes or whatever it is. I would still it is because other agencies would come into play there. Other agencies, I told you, it's a slightly loose definition, but because the Bill Gates Foundation is doing a lot of this work, it will obviously meet the definition of a grant. And I know entities who have taken money from Bill Gates Foundation and shown it as a government grant, even under Ind AS also. So I would still say that it is a government grant. So that's why we will have to look at it from that point of view. Incidentally, there's going to be a small definition which is coming out from the IASB, and also in MCA will come out with it, which is trying to specifically want to specify what is the government grant. So Appendix A, government assistance I told you about, operating in a particular industry, continue to operate in a start or continue to transfer of resources for these people, whether, say for example, the government tells a particular cement company that you will have to open a cement plant in Medak district because Congress candidate is standing for election from there, and there will be a lot of activity, business will happen there. The government is telling this in the normal course. Or look, they also talk about general advisory roles. They say that this is a good area to start investing in. The standard makes a distinction between two important factors. One is that actual transfer of resources should happen there. Actual transfer of resources should happen. If actual transfer of resources happens, it will fall under definition of a government grant. If it does not happen, a government is just saying that Chennai is a good area to start automobile industry, that everybody knows. They may give advice. They may tell you where to go in Chennai. They may say, go to Sriperumbudur area, go to this particular area. But that's only advisory. There's no transfer of monetary resources. If there's no transfer of monetary resources, we will have to worry about whether the standard applies or not. I would feel that it would not apply because it's just advisory role here. Government assistance is very, very clear. So I think a lot of questions are still being asked about government or other agencies. And again, Naga has asked a question to clarify on this particular thing. So I think I will, as I have been explaining, this one is, of course, the definition is very, very loose, right? So there's no government, we know, government agencies, we know. Similar bodies is a problem. Similar bodies is always a problem. That's why I put it and highlighted it also in bold in the presentation. So I am going to look at it from, as I said, I'll go by the principle of elimination, and also whether I will first go look at it from the financial instruments. Right? So if we are looking at it from the point of view of an agency which is not natural in the business of giving grants, right? Bill Gates Foundation only gives grants. Bill Gates Foundation has no other what you can call as areas. So I would put them under other similar bodies. Infosys giving a grant, Infosys has got a foundation, but Infosys Limited giving a grant to me, I will not take it as a grant because I will say this is not their main business. So it's not their main business. So I will classify it that way. Other agencies, I'll put it in that manner. I would say that it applies to other agencies wherein main business is grant. Even if it is a private limited company, I will not eliminate the standard, but I will first go to financial instrument standard, see if it is a financial instrument, and then look at what is to be done for the government grant. Okay. This is what I told you all. Quickly, I put this in from the Lufthansa's financial statements. This was a loan given from a company called Scofag. Don't worry about the German terms and all. 150 million. This was given in COVID time. This was given in COVID time. And I think last year it was given. The loan is recognized as a grant in the profit or loss after certain requirements they have met, as what Lufthansa has disclosed in their financial statements. Obviously, there's a little bit of a background to this, so I will quickly explain to you all why this, and this part is from the auditor's report, key audit matters. This part is from the auditor's report, key audit matters. They mentioned this particular thing here. So basically, what has happened is that Lufthansa, because of the fact that they had issues in flying, they could not fly during this first time. We are talking about 2020 basically. the governments of different nationalities have supported a lot of airline companies. Delta Airlines would have almost closed down if not for support from the US government. So Lufthansa got this money from an institution, whatever it's called, financier, DES, or GmbH, whatever it may be. They got 150 million euros from this particular institution. There was one clause there which said that if you are a subsidiary company, which is Austrian Airlines is a subsidiary company of this thing here, if that particular entity incurs certain losses, you need not repay this loan. And those losses were specified, losses of some whatever amount. You need not repay this loan. Now, what happened was the grant, this loan was received in somewhere in January 2020, March 2020. And in the month of May or June, the Austrian company had already incurred those losses. So that criteria was met. There are other terms and conditions, but I'll just simplify it and tell you. So what Lufthansa did was they wrote to this German institution and said that, look, this is my results of my Austrian subsidiary. This is what is, the terms of the loan. So can I, as per this thing, I don't have to pay you. COFAG said, yes, that's the deal. Now the losses have increased now, so you don't have to repay it. So they waived off the loan. Again, COFAG, in the business of granting loans, gave this as a loan, and the loan had two conditions. One was a normal repayment condition or repayment term sheet in case Lufthansa was profitable and Australian Airlines was profitable. If it was not there, they had to show it as this loan was not payable. Now, very interesting thing here is that I will again go back to this basic thing from the Lufthansa point of view. Obviously, when they took the loan, it was shown as a financial instrument. It was shown as a loan. Ind AS 109 has got a specific clause for derecognition of financial instruments. It's got a specific requirement for derecognition of financial instruments, wherein I recognized it when terms and conditions have not been met. I derecognize it. Derecognizement, obviously, I'll show it in my P&L account only. I'll obviously show it in my P&L account only as income, or what, like how we wrote for creditors no longer payable written back. Similar thing here also. Why did Lufthansa want to show it as a government grant instead of derecognizing the financial instrument is the question which we will have to look at. But if you had looked at the terms and conditions, that's why I said the terms and conditions are important. This is only one part of what I've told you. The terms and conditions are important. The terms and conditions have said that this particular COFAG who had granted this loan, only silent participation. They could not question, and there were about 4 or 5 conditions. So what Lufthansa did was they said that if you look at all these terms and conditions, it was more in the nature of a grant than in the nature of a loan which could not be repaid. Therefore, they have shown it as a government grant here. This can be questioned. That's why the auditors have shown it as a key audit matter in their audit report also. But the point I'm trying to say is that if I derecognize the financial instrument, I need not have shown it as a government grant. And that possibility still was there for us, for Lufthansa. I'm quite surprised why they did this, but maybe there are some other conditions which were not met, which I do not know about. So they will probably be best aware of it. But as I said, what is important here is the disclosure part. I even got this information only because of a disclosure given in the financial statements, in which they've talked about it as a government grant. Now, one possibility which I thought, I don't know the exact dates, but I'm just telling you all this, putting this in place because you should not get confused between financial instruments in here, right? One possibility here is that they got the money only after the event was over. Therefore, they shown it as a government grant. So it was not shown as a loan in the first place. The terms and conditions were put out by the time that subsidiary company already incurred losses. Therefore, they got the money subsequently. Therefore, they have shown it as a government grant. That is the only thing I can possibly think of. But I thought I should put this up in front of you all because it is important to understand, what are the implications if the grant conditions are not met? Will the grant not be recognized? So Amit Kumar sir, the first thing is that you will recognize it only if there's a reasonable assurance that you are going to meet those conditions. Reasonable assurance, which means that as an entity, you're going to say that, look, I'm probably going to meet those conditions, right? If the conditions are not met, very obvious what is going to happen. It will less like how we just told you in case of this Lufthansa particular thing. It'll once it's recognized, it will be shown as income. You may not amortize it, you will show it as income in that particular year. So I think I would look at it from the point of view of first initial recognition. Are you going to recognize this initially on the basis of assurance that you're going to meet those terms and conditions? If the answer is yes, no problem. Answer is no, please go ahead and show it as income there. Similar bodies means promoted by government. Government needs to have a stake in the entity giving grant or otherwise. Akshay. So again, a question on similar bodies. I would not put words like stake and all here. I would just say participating. Have the government participate? Have they put in some money or I won't say investment, or the best word I've used is promoted. Is it promoted by the government? Invariably, when promoted means they may have some stake. They may have some small stake in that. So I would put it as that. So I think we will leave it at that because this is a important thing. You all can show a disclosure. You all can show a disclosure. That's not going to matter much because you all can always say that, look, I have shown it as a government grant. I felt it is from a government agency, therefore I've shown it as a government. And that is possible, definitely. There's no doubt about it at all. So this completes your Ind AS 20. We will now move on to the next standard, Ind AS 21. Either one, it's a very, okay, I think there's one more question. Okay, actually I said, okay, thanks. Right. Okay, so this is a standard which has created a little bit of a controversy. I'm going to start off with that only, but we know about the fact that this changes in foreign exchange rates, just like government grants, Sir, break one, ma'am. No problem. We can have a break. I'm always welcome for a break. Sunday morning, coffee could be. No issue, sir. Should we have a 5-minute break and come back? I will leave you all to decide. No time. It's 8:22. We come back by 8:30. Sir, okay. Okay, great. We'll have a 7-minute, 8-minute break. No problem. We'll come back by 8:30. Thank you so much. Okay, so we will resume the second standard in AS 21, not a very complex standard also. Okay, one of the things which has come up in the chat box is that we will take questions in the end. So kindly keep your questions for the end, and we will finish this standard and then we will look at, because obviously a couple of people have felt that continuity is not that completely by that, no problem. So we will take the questions at the end. We'll finish the standard first. This will not take much time, I can tell you all. Okay, Srikanth sir, good morning again. Nice to see you here. A lot of known people here in this particular thing. So thank you so much for joining. Right. Okay, now this standard has got two aspects to it. One, of course, is the fact that in your AS, we had this thing called as para 46 and later para 46A, which talked about capitalization of foreign exchange differences. It was there as part of your AS. So AS level, that was always there. IFRS has always felt that all the foreign exchange differences either go to the profit or loss account or it goes to your other comprehensive income. It does not form a part of balance sheet at all. So the capitalization concept which we know about in your AS was never there in your IFRS thing. So it is always felt that it is a notional entry. These foreign exchange gains and losses should always go and sit either in your profit or loss account or in the other comprehensive income, which, as we know in the Indian context, is just an extension of the P&L account. In IFRS, OCI is a separate statement by itself. But I mean, in terms of presentation, only it's a separate statement. For all practical purposes, in India, it is an extension of the P&L account. What we know is those entries which are specific to OCI will come in your OCI. So I think that is one discussion which we should definitely be having here, because there has been a slight, interpretational issue in this Ind AS 21 first time adoption, which I will talk to you all when I do that particular thing at the end here. In the we only require three things, which I think is very, very clear: functional currency, foreign currency, presentation currency. Presentation currency, courtesy schedule 3, always has to be for an Indian company, has to be Indian rupees. Functional currency, you can get a lot of theoretical questions. We know, for example, that the functional currency in India is Indian rupee, for the simple reason that all economic activities in the country take place in Indian rupee. I do not know that Bitcoin will become a functional currency at some point of time. As of now, it is not. But trade, I mean, for all practical purposes, a lot of transactions are happening in the, so it is a currency which drives the primary economic activities of the enterprise of the country, is what the standard defines it. Foreign currency is a very simple definition. It's actually a negative definition. Is a currency other than the reporting currency in which the financial statements are this thing. So, Indian GAAP, there was no concept of functional currency. Your AS did not have anything called as functional currency. So we can go on about this particular discussion. What is the primary indicator, secondary indicator for the primary economic environment which entity generates and expends cash? Generally, they are saying that this will be the primary. Because why the functional currency is important is because there can be a change between the functional currency and either the presentation currency, or it can also be a change in the foreign currency, because there could be two different types of currencies. You can have, so as I said, in the Indian context, we are always used to the Indian rupee as a functional currency, because this is what is influencing sale prices, labor, material, ellame is being done in Indian rupees only. So in terms of India, we don't have a problem. But I will give you all a small twist, because India as a nation is not going to apply Ind AS, right? But enterprises which are located in India or who are functioning in India use this as a particular functional currency. So they will look at the economic environment. But I will give you all a small difference which can possibly happen here. The difference is that the GE, for example, the US company, GE, they've got a research center in India, in Bangalore. They've got a research center in India in Bangalore. And they are only doing research in all these aeroplane engines and whatever's new technologies and all those things. It's called GE whatever it is, GE Research Center, whatever, GERC it's called, I think, right? The best part is that most of these people are paid in US dollars. They're paid in US dollars, right? this research center has got no economic activity, no income, profit and loss account. No, there's no profit and loss account at all. It's only expenditure. They get money from the holding company, which is in the form of, all your reimbursement of your salaries and all those things. Salaries are paid in US dollars, I told you. No income. 85% of the salaries are paid in US dollars. The remaining 15% can be normally, some local people are there. They are paid in Indian rupees. There's no currency for the purpose of income, as I told you. Bank account, they have got one foreign bank account and they've got an Indian bank account. So the bank account abroad, not abroad, but in India is what is called an FCNR account. From there, it comes into the, Indian rupee, and, some translation is made there also. If GE Research Center has to determine their functional currency, they can still stake a claim that it is going to be in US dollars and not in Indian rupees, for the simple reason that one is, of course, there is no primary indicator here. The secondary indicator is all their activities, including money coming from the holding company and salaries being paid, are all being in US dollars. They can make a claim that it is US dollar and not the Indian rupee, because the Indian rupee component is extremely limited to only about 15% of the salaries here. But this is only a theoretical discussion, because we will have to look at it from the point of view of what that particular entity's economic environment is going to be. You can get a lot of questions. You can get a lot of such theoretical questions. These are very nice from the point of view of examination. It's very good from the point of view of examination. But you look at this particular thing, right? Say for example, oil refinery, they are saying that this 45% is in US dollars. The revenue analysis points to US dollars. Cost analysis is mixed. Depreciation is not considered because the primary is generated 55% US dollar, 44%. If it was a CA Institute examination, I would easily said that most frequently used term here is US dollars, so functional currency is US dollar. The Indian component is very small in this particular thing, right? But we will have to look at it from the point of view of what is that economic environment here. So what is the primary indicator? What is the secondary indicator? I think that is what is going to be important here. In the case of Indian entities, which are functioned in, which are sort of, domiciled in India and earning foreign currency, right? It can be a little bit difficult, because all your income in terms of your revenues could possibly be in the form of convertible foreign exchange. That's the word which is being used, convertible foreign exchange. But a major part of your expenditure is going to be in the local Indian currency, right? Financing can probably happen in the local Indian currency. Receipts from operating activities are usually retained. All these are secondary indicators here. So I would probably think that when this is a problem, wherein you've got both foreign currency and you've got a primary, you've got local currency also, I don't think this percentage game should work here. I don't think you should worry about 55% versus 45%, right? In the case of this GE Healthcare Center, I told you that 85% of the salaries are being paid by in US dollars. So therefore, they can stake a claim to make their functional currency as the US dollar, right? But in this particular case, this foreign currency, Indian, which is earning, maybe different foreign currencies also, may not necessarily be the US dollar. It could be euro also. It could be other currencies also. I would still stick my neck out and say that it is Indian rupee, because the expenditure side, not much is happening in terms of foreign currency. So therefore, the functional currency would be this thing here, right? So a couple of true or false questions. We'll not worry about this, but yeah. So foreign operation conducted in a currency other than the reporting entity, proportion of transactions the parent. See, India AS 21 talks a lot about this number of transactions, degree of operational independence and all those things. But I would just say that it is very easy to determine from the Indian entity point of view, from the point of view of the domiciled Indian entity, because primarily we are going to say that it is going to be the, so I'll just give you all the same GE Research Center I told you about. Luckily, they don't have to, it's only an institution, not a private limited company, not even a Section 8 company. Suppose they were registered in the Companies Act. They have a US dollar balance sheet. but they will have to do a presentation currency of Indian rupee because you cannot present in you cannot present the Indian rupee or dollar balance sheet. So there will be a difference between presentation currency there and the dollar and the functional currency there. I'm just keeping that as a placeholder for you all to understand that the concept of functional currency introduced in Ind AS 21, not there in your AS, can change depending upon the primary and the secondary economic environment of that particular entity. I'm not going to say that always it will be the Indian rupee, right? I'm not going to say that also, right? It is possible. It is possible that there can be, companies which are having a large number of operations in, let us say, foreign currency, but it has to be both. It can't be only one thing. Borrowing, purchases, sales, expenditure, all that will have to be a part of your foreign currency. In that particular case, they can probably choose a different foreign currency. So there are a lot of such examples which have been given. I will share this presentation with the SIRC. You all can go through it, but this is only for the purpose of, as I said, this may sound good from an examination point of view. Yeah, they're saying that, okay, we're purchasing from the USA, purchases in USD, based on sales goods in USD, external commercial borrowing is there. So it's very clear that a large part of the activities are undertaken in USD, so they can probably stake a claim saying that the USD is the functional currency here. Why is this a matter of even a debate? Is because, as I told you, the standard introduces this concept of functional currency, which was probably not new, right? So determine a functional currency here. You can look at this particular, sequence which have been followed. They have talked about sequence of influencing currency and all these things here. I think this example is, look at this example. You can also answer Raman sir's question, I think, which he mentioned about. But anyway, foreign company owning subsidiary in India, local source and manufactured by this thing. All the goods are exported and sold in Australia. As I said, typical CA final examination question, this is confuse as much as possible. Put as many currencies as possible here. You look at this situation here, they are talking about Indian company. We will worry only about XYZ Limited, okay? We'll worry about XYZ Limited, assembles all goods in India, which means what? They are having a combination of locally sourced materials and also from country abroad. All the exports are to Australia, based on selling prices determined by the Australian company, influenced by the Indian market. The company has a loan from an Indian bank. So if I ask you all to answer what is the functional currency here, I'm going to get two possible answers, only Indian rupee or Australian dollar, AUD. But again, here the question is going to be, which is the more influencing currency? If you go, which is going to be the more influencing currency? Yeah. So because the selling price is determined by ABC, which is located in Australia, and they have got export of goods also happens there, we can probably stake a claim saying that the main part is Australian dollar. Therefore, influencing currency is the Australian dollar. The functional currency also is going to be the Australian dollar. So this is the basic answer. I think this is what they have come up. But look at what they have done here. They have said that sales is influenced by Australian dollar, but they have just gone by a mathematical sequence in which they have said that INR is more there for more practical purposes. INR is more, therefore INR is the functional currency here. So if you go back to this example and look at these two particular things here, it is not what is more primary, what is more secondary here. I think what we have to very clearly understand, what we have to very clearly understand is the fact that primary driver is always going to be a important factor here. But I'll also tell you all, since this is a judgmental situation here, it's not, there's no formula given in Ind AS 21 for functional currency. There's no formula given, right? Unfortunately, there's no formula given, and they cannot give a formula also for functional currency. What is primary here? It appears that if you go back to the primary definition in the standard, they talk only about sales, right? So sales becomes primary in this particular case. But then if you look at the equation of expenses, right? They are also incurring expenses in India, and more importantly, loan from an Indian bank is also there. So one of the companies which I know has given a stance saying that if I do not have the loan, I cannot export. Therefore, it's primary for me is loan. A loan is in Indian rupees. Therefore, it's a functional currency. Having said all of this, I will also tell you all that because of this, which I told you earlier also, normally the economic environment will determine what is going to be your functional currency. We need not spend too much of time on functional currency because the primary economic environment, which is a large part in the, at least from the companies who are implementing Ind AS, would be the Indian rupee only as terms of functional currency, unless you have got, I won't even use the word called significant, a lot of activities in foreign currency. Only then you would probably have to use a different foreign currency and not this thing. So I'm going to look at this from the point of view of, I'm going to finish that with that particular thing. And as far as translations, as far as foreign currency, that's why, I mean, to answer Raman sir's question also, Infosys, a lot of, transactions, one is, there is no one single functional currency, foreign currency. They've got different foreign currencies. They've got rupee, euro, dollar, euro. So I think it will have to be Indian rupee only because there's a basket of foreign currencies there. And all their hedging is done in Indian rupees only. So I think that is also a factor which will make me say that they are doing Indian rupee only. For translation, initial measurement, we know that there are going to be, let us say there's a subsidiary company in Australia or UK or USA, and they are incurring costs, or they are incurring transactions, they are spending money on a daily basis in foreign currency. My subsidiary in Australia will be having Australian dollar, or UK, US company will be having US dollar expenses every single day. They'll be transferred, or your normal debits to your P&L account. Ind AS 21 talks about spot exchange rate. They talk about the fact that what apply the spot exchange rate between the functional currency and the foreign currency at the date of the transaction. So we have a date of the transaction. We know that today they have spent, let us say that today is the 15th of August. They have spent some $100,000 in US on particular thing. Take 74.9 today's rate and account for it, whatever that rate is, right? Spot exchange rate. Standard also gives us permission to use an average rate, because it may become very, very difficult for companies to keep on looking at exchange rate every single day. If you look at the RBI website, they will give you what is called as spot, buy, sell, immediate. What rate do you take? For all practical purposes, you can take the spot rate, no problem. But the standard goes one step further, and they say that if you are having transactions which are regular in foreign exchange, you can take an average rate under the condition that they do not fluctuate significantly. Under the condition that they do not fluctuate significantly. Again, I will tell you all that the word significant has not been defined in Ind AS or in IFRS. So today, if the US dollar is 74.90 rupees and tomorrow it is 73.50, and you tell me if it is significant or not, I will say it depends. Many a time in Ind AS, the answer is not yes or no. The answer is always it depends. Depends on a lot of factors. But it is possible that we have used a thumb rule, which has worked well so far. Any variation more than 20% is significant. We have using that as a thumb rule. Whether it is right or not is a different question altogether, but we have used it as a thumb rule. So, like for example, all your BPO companies, all your KPO companies who do once in a month billing, the billing always happens at the end of the month, right? The US dollar at the beginning of the month will be 73.50, end of the month it will be 73.83. If you go and ask your banker for the foreign exchange rate today, he'll give you different rates. He'll say, sir, what purpose you want it for? He'll give you different rates. He'll say, I'll give you the best rate and all these things. So standard permits us to use what is called as an average. So this BPO company or the KPO company I spoke about, they will say 73.5 on the 1st of August, 73.8, 15th of August, 73.7, end of August, I'll take an average. Standard permits us to take this average for recurring transactions, provided the fluctuation is not significant. As I said, we have kept a benchmark of 20%. You all can choose any benchmark which you all feel is convenient for you all for the purpose of this thing is what is important is this is initial measurement. Subsequent measurement, standard gives a very good sort of guidance and talks about monetary or non-monetary. It talks about the word called as monetary or non-monetary. It uses the word called as non-monetary and non-monetary. Okay. Good thing that Raman sir is answering a lot of questions. So it's good for me also. It helps me also not to answer those questions later on. Idra, I feel that maybe India could have been a little bit more, clear, because this is exactly what has been given in IAS 21. At least we have given some Indian balance sheet sort of, figures here, or, line items here. Monetary, non-monetary classification becomes important from one very simple point of view, which is that at what rate we have to translate it, because that could change depending on the classification of monetary and non-monetary. You look at what the standard has said: provisions to be settled in cash, monetary; bonus to be paid, monetary. Not monetary is prepaid expenses, inventory, intangible assets, PPE, all this is non-monetary. So I will try and simplify this a little bit further and say that property, plant and equipment, investment property, all those asset-based things are non-monetary in nature. Asset-based things are non-monetary in nature. Similarly, liabilities which are payable over the long term would also probably be non-monetary, but immediate things like short-term provisions, employee benefits would be monetary in nature. It is important to understand this classification because translation difference occurs between monetary and non-monetary. The way you present it is obviously different here. So just keep this in mind. For the purpose of the next slide, just keep two ideas in mind. One is property, or let us say inventory. Let us say inventory, right? We will use the word called inventory because it's non-monetary, and we will take bonus to be paid, which is monetary, for the purpose of the next presentation here. What they are saying is that monetary item translated the closing rate, changes in the profit or loss account in the period in which they arise. So monetary item, I told you all, bonus paid, which was given as an example of a monetary item, translated closing rate, and changes in the profit or loss in the period in which they arise. So bonus would have probably been shown at 74.5 initially. Closing item would be 74.6 or whatever that difference is. That will go to profit or loss. As a side note, please use the word profit or loss and not profit and loss, because you cannot have profit and loss in the same year. Always it has to be profit or loss only. You look at the India standards, many times they use the word called profit and loss. It cannot be profit and loss, it has to be profit or loss. So it's very clear. Monetary item, translated the closing rate, differences go to profit or loss account. Non-monetary item, which is invariably going to be your historical cost. Non-monetary item, please remember, property, plant and equipment, I told you. It could be revalued, it could be at cost. If it is at cost, translate using the exchange rate at date of transaction. No changes at all. So you bought an asset in US. You bought a car in US on 15th of September 2020, 74.9. It will remain at 74.9. No translation difference on that car, right? Non-monetary item measured using fair value. You revalued the land you bought in the US. You are using the revaluation method, right? Translated the exchange rate date of fair value was measured. It could have initially been at cost and subsequently at revaluation. So this land which has been purchased on 15th September 2020, initially at cost, subsequently at fair valuation, use the fair valuation date. Use the date of fair valuation or exchange on the date of fair valuation, and those exchange differences can be presented either in P&L account or in other comprehensive income. As you all probably know by this time, any changes in revaluation surplus would go and sit in your other comprehensive income. Very important to note that the exchange gains as also deferred taxes on those items would also go and sit in your other comprehensive income. Any differences in exchange differences as well as deferred tax on those items of OCI components would also go and sit in your other comprehensive income. So the distinction between monetary and non-monetary by this time you all know is very, very clear. It has to be for the purpose of subsequent recognition. Initial recognition, always date of transaction. Subsequent recognition, monetary items, date, closing date, or we can do it at what they use the word called as closing date, which is the date of balance sheet. Non-monetary item, never retranslated. It will be on the date on which the fair value has been done. Loans, a question can come. That's why I said, no, India should have given us specific examples of, loans, right? What about short-term loans? What about long-term loans? Would they be monetary in nature? Would they be non-monetary in nature? Loans invariably have to be repaid back. Loans invariably have to be repaid back. There is a repayment schedule. The current and non-current classification would not matter here, but the fact remains that because the loans have to be repaid back, they are going to be paid in cash. Therefore, it would probably be a monetary item only. It will not be non-monetary. So, which can be immediately converted into cash, in which they have got a certain, that would meet the definition of a monetary item. So that also will have to be retranslated. A couple of examples I've just given for the purpose of making it clear to all of you all. This is a Mexican supplier. I mean, don't worry about Mexico and all. Very simple here. Show the accounting entries. See, the problem in India is another books in India. Everybody has given books on India. You've got Dolphy D'Souza book, you've got so many institute material. Not even one single book has got journal entries. They say present it in other comprehensive income. Journal entry. What is journal entry? In fact, we told the ICA long back that why don't you please bring out a book which says journal entries in India? What does the auditor see ultimately? Auditor sees only journal entries. What does the accountant do? He sees only journal entries. We are coming from a reverse approach, but here you can see that there is a requirement for advance payment will be a monetary item there again, right? Because it will be repaid. So I'll take those questions at the end. Don't worry about that. When the purchase has been done, look at what has happened. The purchase has been done on 25th of October. 2,86,000 pesos, put a number. So 11.16. So my first entry is going to be purchases to trade payables at 11.16 on date of transaction. My subsequent entry is going to be when I actually paid trade payable debit, bank account credit 10.87. And the difference will go to gains or losses, which is what has happened here. You can look at it. I've actually put the journal entry here. There's a loss here because the currency has come down to 10.87. 684 is the loss. So this is cash or bank as the case may be. This will be your journal entry for this typical this thing here. I will also go back and look at whether this item will have to also look at whether this is going to be a monetary item or a non-monetary item. That's why I said this classification becomes very, very important. We told you all that items like fixed assets and all those things, right? Fixed assets and all those things would definitely meet the definition of non-monetary. But anything which is repayable in cash or in the form of cash and cash equivalents, the word used, would definitely meet the definition of a monetary item. So here, once you have passed these two entries, you look at I'll come back to this. Yeah, look at what has happened here, that 31st of December, because the trade payable was there on this particular transaction. Assuming it has not been paid, I would believe that he's saying it's not being paid. It's not been paid in full, I think. That's what they're trying to say here. Otherwise, the goods remain in inventory. The goods remain in inventory at 31st December 2017. So that's why this 11.02 has come into play there. So the supplier remains unpaid on 31st December 2017. The supplier remains unpaid, that means trade payable. Trade payable means, again, monetary item. Again, we'll have to do a restatement here. So if you look at the trade payable situation there, you look at this entry here. Again, there's been a difference which has happened here. 11.02 has happened there. So 3.326 will be the exchange difference here because it's a trade payable, right? So you are going to talk about the fact that this last question remains unanswered. Inventory, right? Inventory with at the end of the reporting period at 25,627. This has already been taken care of. Your inventory, again, non-monetary. So no adjustment for a subsequent, no need for a subsequent adjustment because it's non-monetary in nature. So these are the sequence of entries. As if it is still receivable, correct? Yeah. So these are the sequence of entries you will have to follow for the purpose of doing this particular translation of foreign currencies, right? Foreign currency translation of financial statements, functional currency to presentation currency. There can be a difference here, right? Balance sheet, closing rate at the reporting period, statement of profit or loss, exchange or date of transaction. Practically, we take what is called as periodic averages. Equity should be shown as translated, equity should be shown at actual rates here, right? So this is only for the purpose of translation of a foreign operation. Now I can tell you all, I mean, I think all of you will probably know this already, but just to give you all a little bit of this thing about this other comprehensive income. See, many times we get into a situation in Indies in particular. I've seen this happening in many cases, right? Especially in Indies, we've seen this happening very frequently. Journal entry நம்ம போட போறோம். We will know exactly debit property plant and equipment. That we know very clearly. And the credit எங்க போறது தெரியாது. We not know where the credit has to go. Because the transaction may be like that. So many people think that credit தெரியாதா, okay fine, we'll put it in other comprehensive. So for all practical purposes, many people use OCI as a parking ground because of the fact that we could not put this. So I would definitely tell you all that it is not a parking ground. You cannot put it under OCI because what is mentioned in OCI are very specific items in Ind AS 1. Revaluation surplus. Actually, it is not revaluation surplus. It is changes in revaluation surplus. Your revaluation surplus will first go to your revaluation reserve only. Only changes in revaluation surplus will be a part of your OCI. Actual gains and losses. Effective portion of a cash flow hedge. And translation of foreign exchange of a foreign operation, which is what I'm showing here now. So whatever is the differences, because you have a different presentation currency there, right? You have a US dollar balance sheet. You're converting to Indian rupee balance sheet because of consolidation, right? Those differences would go and sit in your other comprehensive income because of a specific insertion, specific comment or specific provision made in Ind AS 1 saying that translation of foreign currency or foreign operations would go and sit in other comprehensive income till when it will sit there, till the foreign operation is disclosed. You have to see in the Ind AS schedule 3 you have two situations. OCI, what will recycle back to P&L account, what will not recycle back to P&L account. Cash flow hedge, once the transaction is over, it will recycle back into P&L account. Effective portion. Actual gains and losses will never come back to P&L account. So this distinction we have to maintain. We should know that the purpose of the other comprehensive income is only to protect the profit and loss account or to protect a lot of variations in the profit or loss account. Say, for example, in this particular case, suppose I am, let us say, in Afghanistan now, wherein Taliban are entering, right? And the currency fluctuates a lot. I put the difference in my profit and loss account. My profit and loss account will obviously go for a toss. So I would want to protect my profit and loss account. Standard gives me the permission of parking it in other comprehensive income. I can show it in other comprehensive income. Once the transaction has been completed, in this particular case, once I sell off the foreign operation or dispose of the foreign operation, we will have to look at either recycling it back into P&L account. It is also possible in some cases to transfer within equity. So from my revaluation reserve or from my what you can say call as reserves in the balance sheet, it will go to other component of equity or it will go to retained earnings as the case may be. But in this particular foreign exchange difference, it will always sit in my other comprehensive income till the foreign transaction or till the foreign operation is what you can say closed. Once it is closed, it will recycle back into your profit or loss account. So I think that distinction is very important for us to maintain, right? Right. Okay. Now we will go to the next part and look at. Okay, we can. I mean, this is basically what has happened again here. This is putting it all together. They said that because again, the CA final, a very good question. This will be functional currency of INR, presentation currency of euro. Entity has got US dollar loan. Only one thing I'm not included here is Japanese currency. That's all. That's the only thing which is missing in this, right? But you see what has happened here. Foreign currency transactions in USD, right? Because my functional currency they're saying is INR, right? Functional currency is always going to be by INR. So that difference, functional currency to presentation currency, because it's a foreign operation, it will go to my other comprehensive income. The transactions of INR to USD, which is normal transactions are happening there, that would go to my profit or loss account. So there's two different things. I mean, we have put both these things put together here has come across as this particular requirement for foreign currency. Presentation currency, I've already spoken about this. Again, we will look at, right? So goodwill and fair value adjustments in a foreign operation. You would have probably seen that, there's no change here because of the fact that considered to be an asset in the foreign operation. So just a consolidation question, because sometimes what happens is that goodwill, monetary or non-monetary, goodwill on that, especially in Ind AS, goodwill is only a balancing figure. if you had followed Ind AS 103, goodwill is not given any value at all. Intangible assets are valued in Ind AS 103, more importantly. That's why you will find that in Ind AS financial statements, you'll find intangible assets to be more than goodwill. Goodwill is just there. But I will give the same treatment. You look at Zomato or even Paytm and all these people's prospectus today. Look at their intangible assets, because they converted to Ind AS and they are recognizing previously unrecognized intangible assets. They recognize things like brand value. They will recognize it as a intangible asset in their financial statement. So I would give the same treatment for goodwill also. The only thing is that in Ind AS, the measurement of goodwill, I don't have to do anything specific here. It's only going to be a balancing figure. It will not be a calculated figure, so to speak. Okay, monetary payables and receivables, foreign exchange bonds, again, same treatment. It will be either a part of my other comprehensive income, or that's why it's called as in the consolidated financial statements. It will see in the CFS, it becomes very interesting because intercompany transactions are knocked off. Intercompany transactions are knocked off in consolidation, right? That we know very, very well, right? But that investment can still be retained. That investment can, so standalone, you may have a problem putting it in your other comprehensive income. So one of the things we understand very clearly from this standard is that there are a lot of disclosures which are there. In fact, I will tell you all that this is, I think by this time, all of you will already probably know that disclosures are pretty intense in Ind AS. I'm using the word called intense because this is my language for it, very, very detailed. You just look at any Ind AS company's financial statements in 2015 and 2017. Look at the financial statements. The annual report, only looking at the annual report, only the disclosures on financial statements, at least 25 to 30 pages addition only because of Ind AS. Minimum 25 to 30 pages addition because of Ind AS accounting policies. The reason, as I told you all, is that the standard or the set of Ind AS standards only talk about this fact that estimates can be made, substance over form, judgment, everything is, in fact, I will tell you all also that you look at countries or geographies who have implemented Ind AS, this concept of useful life, they say that best person to ascertain useful life is not Ministry of Corporate Affairs Schedule 3. Best person to ascertain useful life is the person who bought the asset and person who is using the asset. Similarly, I can extrapolate this a little bit further. Best person to decide how much to provide for a non-performing loan is not Reserve Bank of India, but the person who gave the loan, the bank manager. RBI can only give you guidelines saying, okay, age of loan, standard, substandard, D1, D2, D3. That is very nice as a classification. The bank manager knows the money is not going to come. Let him provide for it on the basis of ECL model. That is what the standards are saying. But what is important is that is why these disclosures are becoming very, very important in Ind AS. Now, in terms of 21, the disclosures are pretty simple. But for example, suppose you've got translations in multiple currencies. A company like Shell or British Petroleum, for example, would probably have multiple geographies, multiple locations, multiple foreign exchange, differences. The standard asks us to give a disclosure about most of those currencies and how those exchange differences have been arrived at. Now, for all practical purposes, what is happening is that the accounting policy remains the same. The accounting policies remain the same. The only thing we will have to know, from the point of view of an accounting angle is that we will have to show it as a part of the disclosure requirement because we will have to give a list of currencies. Now, say, for example, a country like Africa, which again is subject to a lot of currency changes there. We could probably show it as, you will probably know that Ind AS has slightly introduced one standard called as Ind AS 29, accounting in hyperinflation economy. And they have said that inflation rate of more than 100% over 3 years is a definition of a hyperinflation economy. LRMA have always been saying that Venezuela is a good example of hyperinflation economy because Venezuela have stopped becoming an oil exporting nation because of OPEC norms. So the inflation there has gone very, very high. Recently, Argentina is also coming into the hyperinflation economy. In fact, If you look at Zomato's prospectus, they are saying that Zomato's results, which are just announced 2 days back, they said that hyperinflation economy is there in, Argentina has become a hyperinflation economy. So again, difference is extremely large. In the case of a hyperinflation economy, there's a link to the standard here because they say that don't follow Ind AS 21 in terms of norms. Look at what is that actual functional currency. What happens in a hyperinflation economy is that the functional currency automatically changes. The functional currency automatically changes. Let us say, for example, theoretically speaking, I'm hoping that this situation does not arise, but I'm just saying that, let us say Indian rupee, we have got bored of the Indian rupee. And you don't know, demonetization, everything has been demonetized. Let us assume that all currency notes have been demonetized. Not only 2000 rupee notes, only theoretically speaking. What will we all do? We will all naturally move to the US dollar. Because that is the most relatable currency for us. I'm just saying, right? If that situation happens, look at what happened to a functional currency. All our transactions are in US dollar. If I go back to Ind AS 29, it says that use that US dollar versus Indian rupee as a base rate, use an index. On that basis, you retranslate your items in your P&L account. So there's a link between this and your Ind AS 29 also. Of course, in the Indian context, it does not apply because we have been very good in controlling inflation. They always talk about wholesale price index and all these things, the wholesale price index and all this. But yeah, we will hopefully that situation will not come there. But I am giving this from a larger context, saying that disclosures to a lot of, you have probably heard this term in India is very frequent. You have heard this thing, aggregation of information. Aggregation of information means what? What is on the face of the profit and loss account and balance sheet. That is aggregate information. Then you have got disaggregation of information. What is disaggregation of information? Disaggregation of information is your PPE schedule, which gives, land, building, all those things, opening balance, purchases, depreciation, closing balance. Third, aggregation, disaggregation, disclosure. If we read all these three put together for any one item, it is supposed to give all the information which is required for the purpose of Ind AS. So anybody, they use this word called as user of financial statements. Nobody knows who that is now, but they are saying user of financial statements will have to have all the information at his disposal. If you are an investor in a company, you want to know what has happened, you can find it out from the financial statements. So that is the reason for this disclosure. Similarly, for Ind AS, they have given this particular disclosure. Any changes in the functional currency, reasons for the change, laws for the period, all these things have been specifically mentioned in the standard as a disclosure. So one important thing which I thought I should tell you all, AS does not define functional currency. Para 46 of AS 11 carved out is given both in Ind AS. So basically what Para 46A, it was previously Para 46, then again became Para 46A of AS 11 because of the fact that there was an extension granted. It basically talks about the fact that foreign exchange translation differences, long-term currency monetary items, right? Long-term foreign currency monetary items, foreign exchange differences, two treatments were provided as per AS 11 Para 46A. The first treatment was that it could be shown as a part of the asset. The loans, gains or losses could be adjusted to the value of the asset. So if I've got a foreign currency term loan, translation, monetary item, non-monetary item, translation. So therefore that will go to my loans, gains or losses will go and adjust to my loan account. If it was a loan, capitalize it. If it was not a loan, if it was not for a capital item, they said that long-term currency monetary items show it as foreign currency translation reserve. This is what is mentioned in AS 11 Para 46A. Though it was largely felt that this provision had come to India only, or this extension was only because of one single company, but I'm not getting into that details right now because they had a foreign currency loan, which is a bullet repayment over 99 years. Company headquartered in Bombay. All of you will probably be able to guess what the company is, but later on, if you have time, we'll guess what the company is. 2015, when India moved to IFRS or Ind AS, I told you all, IFRS always said that either P&L account, profit or loss account, or OCI. The concept of capitalization was never there in IFRS. It always had to be either profit or loss account or the other comprehensive. what Ind AS did was, in the first time adoption of Ind AS 101, they introduced this clause and said that for foreign currency translation items, para 46 items, long-term currency monetary items, you can continue the existing treatment in Ind AS 101, which meant that there was no need, you could have taken that exemption, continue to capitalize it till the time of first time adoption of Ind AS. But they did one more thing, which has become a little bit of an issue. They reintroduced the same paragraph in Ind AS 21 also. They introduced the same paragraph which is there in Ind AS 101 in Ind AS 21 also, which gives us the impression now, and which also gives us the option now, which says that if I have got a foreign currency translation reserve, or I have adjusted items for in my fixed assets for loans taken before transition to Ind AS, I can continue the existing treatment as per the previous gap itself, even now, because exemption has been given also in Ind AS 21. If it was not there, only done for first time adoption. Any new loans taken, it will always be profit and loss account and balance sheet or OCI only. But past loans for which we had, foreign currency translation reserve or adjusting the capital cost of the assets, those things would continue because Ind AS 101 and Ind AS 21, both the exemption has been introduced. If it was not there in 21, it would only been a time of first time adoption. But because of this, so any foreign currency loan taken adjusted as per paragraph 46A of AS 11, previous loans taken, continue same treatment. New loans taken, profit or loss account or other comprehensive income. So you would find this is there from a lot of companies which have converted to Ind AS. These are only theoretical questions. I'm not going to take those questions. I will quickly look at a few actual questions and then we will answer those questions here. Okay. I think I missed a few questions. So let me take up those questions now. I've almost come to the end of this presentation. So advance to suppliers, non-monetary. Correct, Deepak. No doubt about it at all. OCI, can we say we should be used carefully to park those items which make P&L volatile? Please clarify. Okay. Arun, so OCI, no, there's no need to be careful under. OCI, you just have to look at Ind AS 1, that's all. No, you don't have to be careful under. In Ind AS 1, specific items have been given for OCI, right? Actual gains and losses. You can't put it to P&L account any longer. It has to be in OCI only. Changes in revaluation surplus. You already made a revaluation surplus, you put it in revaluation reserve. Those changes always in OCI. Translation of foreign currency for foreign operation, which I just showed you. Again, in OCI only till the foreign corporation is disposed of. Cash flow hedges, you can park it in OCI. You need not, if you're the option is always there. You can always show P&L account, but option is there in OCI. The purpose of OCI is only to protect the profit and loss account, actual gains and losses. Now, we've all seen actual evaluation report. Have you read the report? Yes, no doubt at all. Have you understood the report? Nobody knows, right? Because the actually gives something called as other comprehensive income. We just put it there, that's all, right? So that's only, so don't need to be careful and all, but yeah, we'll have to follow the standard. That's all I'm trying to say here. Okay. Then payables against regular imports, exchange difference, whether in P&L or OCI, Naga, sir, it is P&L account, regular imports. Problem is the best person is always presumed to be biased and conveniently pick something while he is still the best person. But Badrinath sir, what is this about, sir? I hope you're not talking about speaker here. I'm just saying, just telling you about this thing here, right? Okay. In the subsequent measurement, whether reinstatement is required in respect of advance visit from customers and advance paid for expenses, monetary means no problem. Non-monetary means definitely yes. It will have to be restated. Definitely it has to be restated. Okay. So this is there from the point of view of, okay. So two functional currencies is not, strictly speaking, may not be possible. Again, presentation currency, two presentation currencies. Again, I'm talking about the fact that it's not possible because, so you summarize Ind AS 21, right? Indian context, I'll summarize because largely we'll be following for Indian companies. Largely the debate about functional currency, we will not have because always going to be Indian rupee. We will not have. Presentation currency also, we may not have a different problem because Companies Act, we will have to do as per this thing. Unless you do, for example, for MIS purposes, you can give in your US dollars or euro, whatever currency or what. So in the typical Indian context, we not have much of a problem for presentation currency as well as for your functional currency, largely driven by what we already know. Translation differences can arise only because of changes in transactions in foreign exchange because of regular monetary, non-monetary, for which we have given a very clear guidance in the standard. So the way you will go about this is that you all will take your trial balance. You all will take your trial balance, and you all will obviously show different aspects of your trial balance and classify the trial balance into monetary and non-monetary. Classify it into monetary and non-monetary on the basis of what we have seen as discussion. So all your property, plant and equipment, inventory, intangible assets, goodwill, all those will be non-monetary. This side, you will have your share capital and all these things share capital obviously will be non-monetary because long-term in nature. Loans and advances, provisions, all these things will be monetary in nature. Use that because initial measurement always on date of transaction. Initial measurement on date of transaction, subsequent measurement depends on monetary or non-monetary. So I will always tell you all, I will just, if you all have 2 minutes, I will just show you all a quick Excel sheet which I'll try to prepare. I will just tell you all how to do Ind AS difference also, translation also. Badri sir has asked with reference to RBI and branch manager said, yeah, exactly. Okay, that's what he was talking about. Yeah. I think it's very clear, sir. No, just imagine, sir, I'm just telling you all about this RBI and the fact that, see, RBI got a committee report on Ind AS translation in 2016 itself, 2016, 2017. A very detailed report was made about what will be the impact of if banks go to Ind AS. What are we all doing? When you go for bank audit, what are we all doing? We are doing nothing but this ECL model in a different way, if you ask me. ECL model is saying you will have to, don't look at the incurred loss model, look at the expected credit loss model. It means you make an estimate. We know for a fact that the bank manager himself is saying that, see, we have got this IRAC norms. IRAC norms, what will happen? Typically, if a loan goes bad today and remains bad at the end of 3 years, it will be written off. Ideally speaking, it will be either D3 or it will be written off, assuming nothing happens. It's a function of time, because just a function of time, that's all. But in Ind AS, what they are saying that, say for example, credit card, very good example I can give always is credit card. They are saying that in your ECL model, you know that 5% of your credit card customers are not going to pay you. You have seen this historically as an average. 5% are not going to pay you. So this ECL model says provision, I mean, they use terms like exposure at default, loss given default, the probability of default. You take your credit card portfolio of customers, exposure of default is 1 crore of rupees. Probability of default is 5%. 5% don't pay. In case they don't pay, you lose 20% of your total portfolio. That is a provision for ECL model. Simple. No need for us to worry about whether he's actually going to pay, recovery agent, all those things, discussions are not required. So that is why I completely agree with you. It is extremely judgmental in nature, but you can just imagine what the RBI committee report has said is that the IRAC norms will be the basic minimum which banks have to provide for as per the NPA, for the NPA norms. In case the branches want to decide to provide more, they can use the ECL model. They can use the ECL model. You all can just imagine, Badrinath said, just to answer your question, you can just imagine the amount of work which chartered accountants will have in bank audit if this becomes a part of the norm. Wherein I think this is where we know for a fact that there are 2 areas which banks will be impacted because of Ind AS. One will be your NPS, other will be treasury operation. Random problem because banks will get hit in both areas because they'll have a huge hit. And that's why I think RBI is keeping on deferring this particular Ind AS implementation. But the problem also remains as to how long can you all wait? We can't wait eternally for this, right? So I think that is why this problem has arisen. But yeah, I think that this judgment will probably go once this particular standards are sort of implemented in a particular manner. Hopefully 22, 23, both IRDA and RBI will agree for moving over to Ind AS for all these banks and financial institutions and insurance companies also. Okay, with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much again for a very patient hearing. I'm still prepared to take a few questions because there's still 5 minutes more. I'm quite sure that all of you may want to go for breakfast, but still, it doesn't matter. I'm still here to take you all those questions. Any questions, please feel free to ask. I think I've answered most of your questions. Okay. Excel. Okay. Excel. I have a suggestion. Can you all just send me an email? I'll send you a small Excel sheet. I think that'll be easier because it requires some explanation. So what I'm basically trying to say is that in your, what you can say, your transition, first year transition to Ind AS, what we normally do is that we'll start from a trial balance. We'll have trial balance. We will show what is the Ind AS, impact, applicable Ind AS. And then we will look at translation differences, first time adoption, all those differences here. I will try and send all that sheet if possible so that, it also captures those differences also, right? So we will look at that also as a part, right? Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you all. Please take care. Happy Independence Day. And do take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. On behalf of SARC, we would like to thank today's speakers, sir, for your informative session.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. Thank you so
And
much.
sir, a small request from the office.
Mm.
Just kindly share us the PowerPoint, sir.
I'll share you this presentation as well as on Excel sheet, madam.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Happy Independence Day, sir.
Thank you.